Amazing story. Poverty-stricken girl unexpectedly discovers millionaire's true heart and love. Emma Harper stood in the mansion's grand foyer, a dust rag in her hand and an uneasy feeling knotting her stomach. This house, with its ornate chandeliers casting dazzling reflections, seemed worlds away from the blue-collar neighborhood where she lived. Just hours earlier, she had served at a diner, her stark apron a reminder of their struggles. And now here she was, perched on a ladder, wrestling with the notion of wealth and what it meant. Every scrape of the cloth jostled her thoughts. What would her dad think if he could see her now? Since her father's passing, Emma had become the sole anchor for her family. Balancing school, caring for her single mother, and tending to her younger siblings weighed heavily on her shoulders. Each day felt like a battle. The sparse paycheck from her 2 part-time jobs barely covered their grocery bills. And now here, in this mansion of all places, her heart raced with worry. What if her family needed her? What if she lost her job and their thin safety net unraveled? As she polished the crystal glass, her gaze caught on a movement across the room. James Collins. Rumored to be shadowed by scandal, he sat cloaked in silence among his canvases, vibrant yet untouched by the vibrant life outside. His somber eyes looked through her, making her pulse quicken. At that moment, the gulf between them felt insurmountable, and yet Emma was drawn to his quiet despair. Before she knew it, she was descending the ladder, setting aside her rag and forging ahead into the study. "Is there something you'd like to paint?" she found herself asking, her voice trembling between uncertainty and a flicker of hope. He glanced up, surprise dancing in his dark irises. Something shifted in that moment. Their worlds seemed to collide, an unexpected connection forming amidst the wealthy decay surrounding them. "Why would I want to paint?" he replied, a mixture of disdain and longing in his tone. Emma felt her heart wrench as his words unfolded a deeper truth within her. Underneath his momentary bravado, perhaps he feared being forever tied to the ghosts of loss and disapproval. She hesitated. Would disobeying the harsh judgments around them bring comfort or only more disapproval? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Why not rediscover it? Uncertainty knitted her brow as she motioned to a canvas. But what was she doing? Her mind wrestled with the enormity of the choice. Should she invite him into light while she's navigating stormy waters herself? Every moment shared over a brushstroke began to feel like a spark, igniting a passion both of them had buried deep. What if these encounters made matters worse? As thoughts of her family loomed, the community's judgment was echoing in her ears, their glares sharper than blades. She was revealing her truth, but the weight of her family's struggles pressed against her chest. What if her heart led her somewhere she couldn't follow? Every hour spent with James was like a double-edged sword, revealing the stirring vulnerability in her soul, while also tethering her deeper into a world that felt unattainable. Happiness intertwined with scars. And as their tentative bond grew, Emma felt the foreboding whisper of fate. Each glance shared, each laugh echoing off the walls, blurred the lines further, until one fateful moment at a local cafe threatened to uproot everything they had built. As the world harshly recognized them, isolation closed in. Would she choose the comfort of familiarity or dare to tread where the heart beckoned? Torn by outside voices and a yearning for love, she faced a choice with stakes that rippled like a pulse. Her heart racing, breaths catching. Will she step into the unknown or retreat into cover? The resolve grew inside her. Would she allow love to flourish despite the judgment, or let fear bind her? Emma stood at the threshold of the cafe, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the weight of expectation tugging at her heart. For the first time, she questioned whether confronting her emotions would lead her forward or drown her in the realities that had long dictated her life. She felt the walls of her familiar world pressing in, yet the warmth emanating from the cafe beckoned her to step inside, an invitation to a different existence, albeit fraught with risks. James sat at a corner table, his brow furrowed in contemplation as he absently stirred his drink. The way he wrestled with solitude ignited a boldness within her. She had never claimed to understand art, yet the strokes of his life painted a story screaming for connection. It took everything in her to approach him, to cross the invisible gap that separated them. With each step, the anxiety frayed her nerves, whispering fears grounded in her reality. Did she dare engage with a man so deeply tangled in a world she could only peep into from the outside? "Hey," she greeted, her voice barely rising above the hum of the crowd. The flicker of surprise in his eyes made her stomach flip. There was an openness there, though it quickly transformed back into the mask of ambiguity he so expertly wore. "Emma," he acknowledged, and she felt exposed, yet infinitely curious. Would he allow her to delve deeper into the intricacies of who he was? "What brings you here?" "I thought maybe we could talk," she replied, feeling as though she were walking a tightrope suspended over a chasm of uncertainty. If she stumbled, would she fall headlong back into the life of obligation and expectation she fought against every day? Their conversation started in hesitant fragments, darting around safe topics. But Emma pressed on, recognizing a solemn solitude in him that mirrored her own struggles with familial responsibility and external judgment. They shared laughter, brief, hopeful moments that felt almost intoxicating. Yet each time she sensed a glimmer of attraction between them, a chain of doubts clanked loudly in her mind, chaining her heart. "Why aren't you painting?" she asked, her curiosity bubbling over. "You have so much to express." The silence that followed felt heavy, like an anchor of regret weighing down their connection. His hesitance was palpable, reflecting the apprehensions she felt while balancing her own aspirations. "Because it's easier to stay silent," he replied, a shadow flitting across his expression. "I've struggled with the perception of my art. It's safer to hide." The unwillingness to engage with his true voice echoed in Emma's own hesitation about embracing the creative side she had long buried beneath the weight of family burdens. As their conversation deepened, the psychic distance blurred. She began to see him as more than just a troubled artist or a wealthy heir. He was simply a person, like her, grappling with the pressures of expectation. In her quiet moments of bravery, she made a decision to reveal her own vulnerabilities, the sacrifices she made for her family, and the deep yearning to create and be free, irrespective of society's stifling norms. But just as the fabric of their talk began to weave a delicate tapestry of connection, the door swung open, and with it burst an ominous reminder of her reality. Her mother's face, pale and strained, caught her attention. A sudden panic washed over her. What did this mean? "Emma?" James's voice cut through the chaos of her mind, pulling her back. "What's wrong?" The darkness pressing down felt suffocating. She realized she had a choice: flee back to her old life or fight for the future she could sense fluttering at the edges of her reality. "Just give me a moment." She turned toward her mother, linking their lives irrevocably. Emma now faced a crossroads. Would she walk away, letting fear dictate her destiny, or fight to forge a new path alongside someone who understood her struggles? As she walked toward her mother, a shiver of resolve sparked within her. Change was coming, but at what cost? In her pursuit of connection, could she stand tall against the encroaching shadows of her past? The taste of uncertainty lingered painfully, and Emma was left questioning what choices lay ahead. Emma approached her mother, each step heavy with the weight of unspoken realities. Her heart raced, a tumult of emotions battling for control. She stood before the woman who had shaped her life, tracing a path through inherited expectations and unyielding duty. In that moment, Emma wondered if she was prepared to confront not just her mother, but the profound implications of her own choices. "Mom, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Her mother's gaze flickered, a mix of exhaustion and something akin to desperation. "I wanted to find you," her mother said, her voice tight. "I need your help at home. They've changed." The words stung like a sharp slap, the familiar ties of obligation tightening around Emma's throat. She thought of James, his quiet understanding, and the snippets of connection they had shared. Exhaling deeply, she stepped back for a brief moment, navigating the emotions that surged within her. "Can't this wait?" she challenged, surprised at her own boldness. "I was having a conversation." "Your father needs you," her mother interrupted, the crack in her voice revealing layers of worry hidden beneath her composed exterior. "The bills are piling up. The house, we're barely keeping it together. I can't do this alone." The fabric of Emma's promises to herself began to unravel. She thought of family dinners where laughter was a fragile veil over anxiety, of a home that had increasingly felt like a cage. Yet standing there now, she felt tethered to those memories and responsibilities, both a daughter and a woman at war with her own ambitions. "But what about my choices?" Emma struggled to voice the thought that quickly spiraled her internal chaos. What about the freedom she yearned for, the connection she had just begun to awaken? It felt like a betrayal to even contemplate leaving her family again to chase an elusive dream. "Emma," her mother's voice softened, desperation curling around every word. "I won't ask if I didn't really need you. You always put everyone else first. It's hard for me to see you moving on when everything here is falling apart." Emma turned her back momentarily, facing the cafe's entrance instead, her pulse quickening with regret and longing. James was waiting. The thought filled her with a dizzying mix of fear and hope. Could she truly step into a world that seemed to ebb further away with every moment? Had her brief encounter sparked a fire or dug a deeper chasm in her heart? "I can't promise to be there all the time," she called back to her mother, emboldened yet terrified. "I'm trying to find my own path. It's just complicated." "Emma!" her mother's voice cut in sharply, drawing her back again. "You owe it to your family to be here." The ring of authority in her mother's tone struck a deep chord of resistance within Emma that had been simmering under the surface for years. The truth of her mother's words echoed in her mind, amplifying each conflicting thought. Emma felt a surge of determination rise up against the tide of familial duty pushing her into submission. She needed to find her own foundation, one built on more than just obligation. "Maybe it's time you start to figure out what I want too," Emma replied, momentarily stunned by the conviction lacing her words. With these words barely spoken, she realized that this was more than just about balancing her life. She was carving out space for her voice to be heard, finally daring to push back against the energy of sacrifice that had defined so much of her existence. As she turned to walk back, the warmth of the cafe beckoned once again, and there was James, an embodiment of the life she yearned for. An electric tension thrummed in the air, both a reminder of what was at stake and a beacon of potential beneath her feet. "I'll help, but I need to do this on my terms," she finally declared, a semblance of assurance in her voice unveiling a budding resolve she had never known. Her mother's confused expression mirrored a lifetime of tangled expectations. Emma inhaled deeply, making her way toward an uncertain yet significant transformation. Both places felt like home, and yet worlds apart. Would she choose to fight for a life that was entirely her own, or would she fall back into the familiar embrace of familial duty? As Emma stepped closer to James and the intricate web of vulnerability and possibility lay before her, a quiet promise whispered in her heart. It was time to confront the echoes of her past and redefine her future. The moment of truth loomed, but little did she know that the next choice would lay bare the fragile heart of her identity. What truths would emerge when she finally faced the expectations she had always feared? Emma hesitated at the cafe's entrance, the sounds of steaming coffee and soft chatter fading into a murmuring backdrop. Her mind played an agonizing game between the comfort of her family and the potential for something greater. She caught a glimpse of James, whose hopeful smile seemed rich with promise, yet shadowed by her internal conflict. A single step felt monumental, the weight of her decision pressing down as each moment expanded. "I need to be true to myself," she whispered under her breath, summoning a courage that felt both foreign and essential. As she walked toward him, the familiar rush of uncertainty washed over her, churning with an equal measure of hope. Could she truly carve a path that embraced her ambitions without abandoning those who relied on her? James waved her over, his unspoken question hanging between them. How would she choose to answer it? He welcomed her with a warm gesture, and Emma felt a flicker of the connection they had shared earlier, igniting the faint embers of her aspirations. "Hey," he said, his voice soothing against the restless thoughts swirling in her mind. "You okay?" Emma dipped her head slightly, and for a moment she contemplated the ease of admitting her struggles, her conflicting loyalties. But the facade of strength was too ingrained in her. "Yeah, just family stuff. You know how it is." James tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his eyes, and she recognized that he sensed the weight behind her smile. "Want to talk about it?" This was the crossroads moment. Would she reveal the pressures building within her, or would she bottle it up yet again? The allure of honesty resonated deeply, yet the fear of losing what she was slowly reclaiming held her back. Instead, she deflected. "Maybe later. How was your day?" As they chatted about trivialities, Emma could sense her heart battling a distinct urge to confide in him. Every joke they shared, every laugh released little pieces of tension. Yet the nagging voice of obligation echoed in the back of her mind, a relentless reminder of the family's needs. What would it mean for her to embrace joy when tears rested on the precipice of her heart? Suddenly, a thought flared in her mind. "James, do you have any plans for the weekend?" she asked, hesitantly. "I was thinking maybe I could use a distraction, something to anchor me." His features brightened, and the ease with which he accepted her invitation reignited the spark of possibility within her. "Absolutely," he replied, and she felt the pressure in her chest begin to lift. "How about we head out to that little hiking trail you mentioned?" Emma nodded, striking a balance between anticipation and lingering apprehension. A hike was simple yet symbolic. The act of moving through nature mirrored her desire to shed the burdens emotionally and physically. As they made plans, Emma felt resolve hardening within her. Each laugh they shared wove a thread of interdependence between them. She wanted to hold on to this feeling, to encourage it to grow, rather than letting it fade into the background of her life like so many other fleeting moments. Yet as the evening wore on, uneasiness settled in. The thought of her family's unraveling frustrations loomed large. "I have to be there for them," her own voice echoed, reverberating off the walls of her mind. Hours later, while sitting alone in her room, Emma felt a tugging sensation. She grabbed a journal and began to write. The pages turned rapidly as words flowed, spilling her conflicting thoughts onto paper. Ambitions collided with obligations in an ugly, tangled mass. She penned every worry, every hope, every flaring question that dared to rise. Amidst it all, she recognized that this internal conflict was telling her something profound. But clarity evaded her. She was still as afraid of herself as she was of her past. Before she finished writing, one question loomed larger than the rest. Could she reconcile her dreams with the expectations that haunted her? And if she dared to step toward her desires, what would that mean for her family? The illuminated screen of her phone buzzed beside her, a text from James lighting up her uncertainty with warmth. "Hey, just checking in, looking forward to our hike." His simple words soothed her fears, but the undercurrent of worry stirred anew. What if he discovered the depths of her struggle? What if he could no longer see her as she desperately wished to be seen? The night's stillness clung heavily. Emma lay back on her bed, heart racing. It was clear. Decisions loomed closer, her path toward liberation intertwining with the fear of familial repercussions. In that nebulous glow of potential, Emma understood one thing deeply. The truth she would face could either empower her to rise above or bind her further into the obligations she feared. And yet it beckoned her, waiting with quiet intensity for her to embrace all that she could become. Would she muster the courage to not only confront her own identity, but challenge the expectations that threatened to suffocate her? The climb ahead felt steep, but Emma sensed that the upcoming moments held the power to reshape her entire narrative, a narrative woven with truths that could finally set her free. Emma woke to the pale morning light filtering through her curtains, the sun illuminating the countless lines of her journal strewn across the desk. The words she had poured out the previous night lingered in her mind, dreams, fears, and an intense longing for clarity. Today, the hike with James felt like a beacon amidst the gray fog of uncertainty. As she prepared for the day, Emma's thoughts spiraled. Would today be a turning point? The expectation of enjoyment battled with the gnawing dread of obligation, holding her captive. She scrutinized the reflection in the mirror, a face caught between two worlds. The woman staring back was craving independence, yet tethered to familial expectations that made her feel like a juggler teetering on an ever-wobbling tightrope. "Just focus on the hike," she whispered to herself, smoothed her hair, and slipped on her favorite hiking boots, which felt oddly comforting as they connected her to the adventurous spirit she hoped to revive. Arriving at the trailhead, Emma absorbed the fresh, crisp air, mixed with the earthy scent of the forest. As James bounded up, his enthusiasm infectious. "Ready to conquer the world?" he joked, his eyes sparkling with energy. An exhilarating excitement thrummed within her, but beneath it was a creeping anxiety. As they started along the winding path, currents of conversation flowed naturally between them, a lively symphony of banter and shared stories. Emma felt the layers of her tension peel away, piece by piece. "Tell me about the biggest risk you've taken," James asked, pausing to steady himself on a path lined with sturdy roots. The question startled Emma, and for a moment silence enveloped her. What would she define as a risk? The little choice to come out today felt monumental, but in the shadow of everything she had chosen not to confront, it seemed trivial. I've always been cautious. I haven't really taken any big ones." James tilted his head, skepticism etched across his face. "Caution is good, but sometimes you need to leap. What's holding you back?" Caught off guard, she felt a wave of vulnerability wash over her. "It's not easy. My family, they need me. I can't just leave them behind." The admission twisted in her gut, laden with guilt. "Needing you doesn't mean you have to sacrifice your happiness," he countered gently, a challenge creeping into his voice. "You can support them and still lead your own life." The very idea struck Emma like a spark. Was it possible? Could desire and duty coexist harmoniously, rather than as adversaries? She refrained from answering, wrestling with the implications of his words. Continuing their ascent, they navigated uneven terrain, each step mirroring her internal battle. The beauty of nature surrounded her, each tree, flower, and bird a reminder of her longing to embrace the world fully. She struggled with her thoughts, torn between contemplating the vibrant landscape and grappling with the image of her family's disappointment if she dared to claim a life of her own. Eventually, they reached a clearing bathed in sunlight, a view that stretched endlessly before them. Emma inhaled deeply, sensing the vastness of the horizon. It was breathtaking, entirely freeing, an echo of the freedom she craved. "Wow, this makes all the effort worth it," James said, gazing into the expanse. His words hung in the air, echoing her internal struggle. "I've always been afraid of losing something if I try to reach for more." The confession slipped from her lips, unexpected yet liberating as she glanced at James, softening at the edges with understanding. "There's a world out there waiting. Don't let fear rule your choices, Emma." His voice held a confidence that both inspired and terrified her. What if he was right? As they stood in the silence of the moment, Emma opened herself to the possibilities swirling in her chest. But just as she felt a breakthrough brewing, the sharp vibration of her phone sent a shock through her, pulling her back to reality. It was a message from her mother. "Can you come home? We need to talk." That troubling sense of obligation shot through Emma with a fierce twist, battling against the hope that had begun to blossom. Now she was caught in two worlds once more, her heart heavy with the weight of imminent decisions, realities crashing into dreams. "Everything all right?" James asked, concern etching his features, pulling her from the brink of introspection. Emma forced a smile, though uncertainty cascaded behind it, clouding her thoughts. "I think I need to go. Family stuff." As the tension between her heart and mind surged anew, she realized a critical moment lay ahead. Could she break free from the burdens that clouded her ambitions, or would she always navigate this internal chaos? What would happen when she returned home? This day promised revelations, but it also threatened to unravel the delicate strands she had begun to weave toward her own identity, propelling Emma to the precipice of a choice that would shape her future. Tomorrow beckoned with the complexity of resolve and connection, but today loomed steeply ahead, and as she looked out over the horizon, deep in her heart, a new question began to raise itself. Would she finally choose to claim her own narrative, shaping it as she saw fit, or would she let it be written by the fears that bound her? The hike back felt heavier, the stones underfoot more pronounced, as if each step was a reminder of the decision that loomed ahead. Emma's mind swirled with the implications of her mother's text. The urgency in that simple statement rattled her. As they descended, she wrestled with thoughts of family duty and the burgeoning desire for independence that James had ignited in her. "Hey, is everything okay?" James inquired, a touch of concern breaking through his playful demeanor. He slowed his pace, allowing her space to breathe, yet his steady presence only heightened Emma's unease. "You seem distracted." "Yeah, it's just family stuff." Her answer felt inadequate as it slipped past her lips, almost childlike. She wanted to be more than just their daughter. She wanted to be Emma, the dreamer who dared to leap. "Family stuff can weigh you down." He didn't let her off the hook easily. "You can talk about it if you want." Emma glanced at him. He was searching her eyes, trying to understand her. There was kindness in his gaze that might have offered her reassurance, but instead it ignited a flicker of fear. What if she shared too much and found herself vulnerable, on display? Would he truly understand the tangled web of responsibilities she bore? "No, it's okay," she managed, a hesitant smile plastered across her face. But the deepening sense of obligation made the facade flicker as she felt her resolve waver. As they neared the trailhead, Emma felt the vibrant scene around her fade into the background noise of her thoughts. The chirping of birds and rustling of leaves transformed into a deafening silence that echoed her internal turmoil, the loudness of all she had to confront clashing with her desire to escape. Reaching the car, Emma hesitated, gripping the handle for a moment longer than necessary. The weight of her decision gnawed at her. "Do you think," she started, making the leap into uncharted territory, "do you think one can change their path mid-journey?" James glanced over, a knowing expression crossing his face. "Absolutely. It's about being brave enough to embrace what you want, even if it means letting go of what is familiar." The resolve in his statement began to erode the walls that held her back. But what would brave mean for Emma? Would it mean stepping into a confrontation with her family, challenging the roles she was expected to fulfill? The thought churned in her stomach. The stakes were high, and she could almost feel the impending strain of their disappointment. Pushing that thought aside, she nodded slowly. "You're right. I want so much, but I'm scared it could influence my family." "They will adapt. They have to." "If they love you," he said gently, "you can't hesitate to bloom just because others might be in the shade." Emma's heart quickened at the metaphorical weight of his words. There was clarity in what he was saying, stirring something deep within her. Herbaceous scents from the forest seemed to inch closer with each inhalation, drawing her into the moment even as doubt whispered in her ears. As she drove away from the trail, the distance between Emma and the shadows of her past felt stretched yet uncomfortably close. She thought of the conversation ahead, the conversations that would surely follow, questioning her choices and her path. Emma felt the trembling potential radiating through her. There was recognition within her, an ache she had neglected for too long. Would she summon the audacity necessary to shape her own journey, or would she let the whispers of dread drown out her dreams? The uncertainty was paralyzing, and yet a vibrant thrill tickled at the edges of her resolve. Arriving home, the familiar landscape blinked back at her, a constant reminder of what awaited: the expectations, the needs, the confining love of her family. But under that pressure, buried deeper, was a narrative yearning to be penned. Taking a deep breath and steeling her nerves, she stepped into her house, keenly aware of the crossroads she now faced. Could she express her own needs amidst the expectations? Could family dynamics shift to allow her the freedom she craved? In that moment of uncertainty walked a revelation, the notion that perhaps she was more powerful than her doubts led her to believe. Today might be a mere prelude, but change was in her grasp, ready to unfold like the pages of a diary yet unwritten. Just before she walked through the door, her phone buzzed again. Another message from her mother, this one reading, "You really need to hear what we want to tell you." Emma's heart raced with the weight of that statement. What were they planning, and how would it reshape her reality? With uncertainty coiling around her like a serpent, Emma stepped inside, aware that the conversation ahead would demand every ounce of her courage. Would she finally confront not just her family, but the fears that tethered her? Emma stepped into the familiar swirl of home, instantly met by the cacophony of family life. Her younger brother's laughter, the sound of her father's tools clinking in the garage, her mother humming softly in the kitchen. Each sound tethered her to the life she'd always known, yet the walls felt stifling, a reminder of her internal conflict. Today wasn't just any day. It was the day she would confront her family and unveil her desires, turning the spotlight onto herself for the first time. With her heart racing, she moved towards the kitchen, where her mother was stirring a pot of spaghetti. The aroma wafted through the air, warm and inviting, yet it only magnified the tension brewing inside Emma. The familiar routine felt suffocating. She could almost picture the well-rehearsed script of her life playing out in her mind. Quiet obedience, sacrifices made, another dream crushed under expectation. "Hey, sweetie, you're back early," her mother exclaimed, her face lighting up. "How was the hike?" "Pretty good, I guess." Emma's response was clipped, and she could sense the concern in her mother's eyes. It was the kind of concern that always clawed at Emma's resolve, making her feel like she was retreating instead of pushing forward. Her mother continued to chatter about dinner plans and her brother's school project as Emma chaotically tried to gather her thoughts around the monoculture of her family. As the conversation wore on, the weight of her mother's message sat heavily on her. They needed to tell her something. The air was thick with unspoken words. "Mom, can we talk?" Emma finally blurted, the impact of her choice staggering even her. The room fell quiet, and her mother's expression shifted to one of curiosity and concern. "Sure, honey. Is everything okay?" Emma swallowed hard, her palms beginning to sweat. I've been thinking a lot about my future, and—" She paused, faltering. The comfort of family love wrestled fiercely with her need to unravel a different narrative for herself. I want to pursue something that feels right for me, something that might not align with your plans for me." Her mother's eyebrows knitted together in confusion. "What do you mean? Emma, you're close to finishing your degree in business. We thought you'd take up the family business after graduation. It's what we discussed." "It's what you discussed," Emma interjected, her voice rising and then quieting, realizing the urgency in choosing her words. "I appreciate everything you've done for me, but—" "But?" her mother echoed, the tone shifting toward defensive. "I don't want to work just to fulfill expectations, Mom. I feel different now. There are things I want to explore, passions, maybe a path that devotes more to who I am than what you'd expect me to become." A straining silence unfolded, heavy with the promise of upheaval. Emma felt her heart pounding. The suffocation of her own hopes echoed in the silence that lingered after her proclamation. She had invited chaos into a space designed for harmony, a challenge to the very fabric of their family dynamics. "Emma, you need to understand that this path you're talking about," her mother's voice trembled, "it's not just about you. We've invested so much time and resources into your education. We thought that you would take up the mantle, be a part of the family tradition." With each word, Emma felt the years of sacrifice, the weight of familial legacy pressing down on her shoulders. Her own vision wasn't just a dream, it felt rebellious. Yet refusing to back down, she forged ahead. "Mom, I want something different. I want to travel, explore art, maybe even write, something that resonates with who I am, not just who you want me to be." The flash of pain on her mother's face struck Emma hard, gnawing guilt creeping in. The love her mother showed was woven tightly with expectation, and here she was, threatening to unravel that bond. "Why can't you?" her mother started, but Emma cut in, urgency electrifying her resolve. "Because I can't, not anymore. I want my own story." There it was, the threshold crossed. The reverberation of her voice echoed through the house, a declaration of independence, perhaps naive, perhaps reckless. But it was hers. Emma could sense the abrupt shift in the atmosphere, the potential for an unconditional confrontation hanging in the balance. Steeling herself, she faced the myriad emotions flickering across her mother's face: shock, disappointment, anger, sadness. Just then, a shattering crash echoed from the living room where her brother was playing. They all instinctively turned towards the sound, a heartbreaking interruption. Yet for Emma, it offered displacement, an escape from the confrontation. But as she looked back at her mother, the space between them charged with unresolved emotions, Emma realized a chasm had formed. Initiating her own path wasn't just about finding her identity, it was about redefining their relationship, reshaping the expectations that had become automatic. The urgency of the moment loomed large, and Emma felt the tempest swirling within her. If this was to be the beginning of her fight for independence, what would it cost her? As her brother's cries continued, she was left grappling with the crux of her decision. Would she stand firm and risk everything she had known, or retreat back into the shadows drawn by familial love? With every ounce of her being, Emma felt the turning point approaching. She would have to decide if she could truly break free from the confines of her environment, or simply fall back into familiarity. She inhaled deeply, determination surging. It was simply time. Turning back to her mother, she found her voice again, praying it would carry strength. "Mom, I need you to hear me." The stakes were high, and the future felt perilous. Yet Emma was finally ready to face the upheaval. Would they weather the storm together, or would she emerge standing alone amidst the clashing forces of expectation that fought fiercely against her desire for self-discovery? Emma stood there, her mother's face a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, and her heart raced not just from fear, but also from anticipation. She hadn't realized how deeply this moment would affect her, or how significant it would be for both of them. It wasn't merely a confrontation, it was a convergence of lives and desires. Her mother broke the silence first, the quaver in her voice betraying her composure. "Emma, what's happening? Why can't you see that we have a plan for you? This is what we wanted for our family, for you." Each word felt like a plea, a tether pulling Emma back into the familial fold she longed to escape. The weight of expectations curled around Emma like a suffocating blanket. Yet at this moment of exposure, defiance began to grow within her. She realized that standing firm could mean dismantling not just the plan her family had crafted for her, but an entire blueprint of who she thought she should be. "Mom, I see your plan, and I appreciate it, but it's not mine. I can't measure my worth in terms of your expectations anymore." Every syllable she uttered fueled a burgeoning fire in her. Emma recognized that if she didn't confront this now, she would lose herself entirely in someone else's dream. Yet, her mother's distressed face twisted her gut. Was it selfish to seek her own truth at the cost of familial happiness? The sudden sound of her brother's giggle, followed by the scrape of his toy train against the floor, sliced into the heaviness of the moment. Emma found herself struggling with the discomfort of not only altering her life, but also possibly disrupting theirs. "Mom, I don't want to be in the family business. I can't keep pretending that it's what I want. There's a world out there, and I crave to explore it, to create, to live." Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with the audacity to draft a new narrative for herself. Her mother's expression shifted from shock to hurt. "I didn't raise you to turn your back on family. Your father and I sacrificed so you could have a stable life." The quaking resolve reflected the essence of generations built on success through their lineage. Emma felt the vast gulf between their identities dance in the air, filling the kitchen with palpable tension. "I'm not turning my back, Mom. I want to bring something new into the world." Emma's determination surged in response to her mother's anguish. "What good is it to follow a conventional path if I lose myself along the way?" The vulnerability between them morphed into an electrifying standoff. Emma could feel her mother's disappointment, but somewhere beneath that was her nagging awareness of how they had shaped her, both in love and in expectation. It pushed Emma to the edge of a profound realization. She didn't want to inherit a life she never chose. As her mother's expression softened, Emma cited a flicker of hesitation. "Are you saying you want to throw away everything we've worked for?" The words felt like weapons laced with an unforeseen sorrow. "No, I want to build something authentic, something real," Emma countered, conscious of the weight behind her words. "I want to find out who I am, not just who I was meant to be." It was here, in the raw authenticity of her statement, that Emma realized the potential of reinventing herself was finally within reach. The uncertainty still loomed, yet Emma could sense a kind of cathartic release. There was an exhilarating thrill in claiming her voice. Suddenly, a gentle shift in her mother's posture suggested a crack in the steadfast wall with expectation. "What would you do if you weren't following this plan?" This question opened a door, a pathway Emma hadn't considered exploring so openly before. "I'd travel. I'd meet people who were living their own renaissance. I'd write and paint, letting every piece reflect who I am at that moment. I don't want to just live a life. I want to craft experiences." In that instant, a new bond formed between them, not as mother and daughter, but as two individuals grappling with their evolving desires. Emma felt as if she was not just speaking of a desire, but igniting a fire within herself, flickering brightly against the darkness of expectation. Yet the road ahead was still complex. Her mother might be considering the shift, but could Emma truly hold her ground while she embarks on this radical journey? What if this fragile dialogue fell apart under the gravity of deeper familial obligations? As her mother's brows slightly unfurled with contemplation, Emma knew this was just the beginning. Unraveling ties that had been tightly wound for years was neither straightforward nor guaranteed. Yet within her was a burgeoning reservoir of courage that she hadn't dared to tap before. Would her newfound voice resonate beyond this kitchen, taking her across new horizons? The unfinished business of her self-discovery beckoned her toward both challenges and liberation. Determined and trembling, Emma straightened her posture. "Mom, can we explore these possibilities together?" In the silence that followed, Emma felt the air shimmer with the uncertainty of what could eventually become a beautiful, chaotic journey, one that might redefine not just her, but the entire family. And with that thought, the real question crystallized. Could she dare to build dreams in the shadows of expectations? Emma stood at the crossroads of expectation and desire, and for the first time, it felt exhilarating. She could almost visualize the paths diverging before her, each one representing a piece of her life. The family business beckoning on one side, an unknown yet promising adventure on the other. Her mother's hesitance hung in the air, delicate like the spider silk threads that draped unnoticed in corners. Emma focused intently, searching her mother's eyes for signs of understanding, acceptance, something more than just disappointment. The urge to shield her mother from further pain battled with the need for her own authenticity. "What if," Emma started, her voice steady but soft, "we reimagined this together? What if I could take what you've built and transform it into something we can both be proud of?" Her mother blinked, the tension in her face easing just slightly. "What do you mean?" Emma's mind raced. Could they blend the tradition of their family with her passion for exploration? "I could document our family business in a way that showcases its heritage while I learn from the world. I want to travel and meet innovators and then bring those ideas back home. It doesn't have to mean rejection." The flicker of hope danced behind her mother's eyes, and for the first time, Emma allowed herself to imagine a future where her dreams did not clash but could coexist with family values. A collaboration was possible, but it would take navigating a foreign terrain filled with fear, hope, and potential pitfalls. "Is that what you really want?" her mother asked, the incredulity evident in her voice. "Yes," Emma affirmed, feeling the weight of her truth lift as she spoke. "But I need your support. I want my experiences to enrich our family's legacy, not erase it." The air between them thickened with possibility. They could redefine their relationship, stumbling through this uncertain landscape together. Emma sensed the thrill of change, tinged with the familiar trepidation, as a new resolve swept through her. She saw the creeping edges of a plan taking root amid the uncertainties. But her mind couldn't escape the pervasive doubts that whirled like autumn leaves caught in a windstorm. Was her mother truly ready to embrace this collaboration? Would they face opposition from a family steeped in tradition? What if she stumbled in her pursuit and shattered the fragile foundation of their newly formed understanding? "Mom, we both love this family, but love doesn't have to mean clinging to outdated paths," Emma pressed forward, the conviction of her shift illuminating her tone. "It's about growth. Let me take a step into the unknown, and I promise to bring it back home." A moment passed, and her mother nodded slowly yet cautiously. "Then you will need to show me." Emma felt a rush of determination surge through her. It wasn't enough for her to merely want this. She needed to plan. She needed a strategy that would articulate her dreams while also respecting her family's sacrifice. As the conversation transformed into brainstorming possibilities, pieces fell into place. Emma's heart raced not just with joy, but the exhilaration of taking control. She would carve out her identity and still honor her roots. But as she sketched the details of her future, a nagging fear whispered that the old expectations would never completely vanish. What if, despite all her efforts, her family clung to the blueprint they had designed for her? What if she found herself wrestling with choices that tore at the fragile fibers of their newly formed bond? She took a deep breath, forcing herself to focus. They were at the dawn of a new chapter, one where she could confront the ghosts of expectations while embracing the exhilaration of self-discovery. "Can we set aside a day each week to talk about everything, to plan?" Emma proposed, grounding her thoughts into actionable steps. Yes, let's do that, her mother agreed, but Emma could see the conflict still lingering in her eyes. The journey was just beginning. That thought sparked a fresh wave of purpose within her. Could she build this bridge strong enough to withstand the storms of traditional beliefs? Tomorrow, she knew, would bring new challenges. Conversations with her family, potential opposition, maybe even trepidation from within herself. And yet, Emma also understood that every misstep now would be a vital lesson in her quest to become who she truly wished to be. Determined to stand firm in her resolve, Emma stepped into the tension of the unknown, excited yet apprehensive about sharing her new aspirations with others who might not understand. The thrill of the journey ahead intertwined with the realization that unraveling the threads of her past wouldn't be easy. Little did she know, the greatest confrontations had yet to unfold, and the strongest tests of her newfound voice were just around the corner, waiting to challenge the very foundation of her emerging self. Emma stood in the spacious studio, the bright sunlight streaming through the tall windows, illuminating the canvases she had so carefully curated over the past few months. Each brushstroke, every splatter of paint told stories of her struggle, her family, and finally, her resolved journey toward independence. No longer was she a mere pawn in the family legacy. She had embraced the artist within, one who dared to envision a life unbound by the weight of expectation. "Are you ready for today?" James asked, leaning casually against the doorframe, a supportive smile on his face. This moment meant everything. Today was the opening of her first art exhibit, showcasing her transition from the duty-bound daughter to an unapologetic creator. "More than ever," she replied, feeling a rush of adrenaline surge through her as she grasped the thin, handmade invitation cards in her hand. Each card represented the culmination of her process, the discussions with her family, the late nights spent pouring her soul into art, and the unwavering support of James. Emma had come to realize that this opening was not merely a chance to gain recognition, but an opportunity to prove to herself that she could forge her own narrative. She recalled the hesitation her mother had expressed when they first discussed her artistry, the fear that her dreams might pull her away from her family obligations. Yet, after countless honest dialogues and shared visions, Emma's mother had come to understand the importance of nurturing her daughter's passion. As they walked together to the venue, Emma felt solid confidence enveloping her, a stark contrast to the uncertainty that once gnawed at her. The whispers of doubt had been largely silenced by the grounding resolve she had fostered through this artistic journey. Upon entering the exhibit, Emma took a deep breath, soaking in the atmosphere filled with laughter, admiration, and camaraderie. Friends and family trickled in, their expressions revealing genuine curiosity and support. Her heart swelled as she caught sight of her mother standing across the room, a proud smile gracing her face, mingling with friends who marveled at the pieces. Amidst the crowd, Emma took a moment to reflect on her growth. She was no longer the shy girl burdened by family pressures. She had become a woman embodying potential, a creative spirit willing to embrace the multifaceted dimensions of her identity without shame. Each completed painting was a testament to her journey through the shadows of doubt to the light of self-acceptance. As the evening progressed, Emma found herself engaged in conversations about her inspirations and the stories behind her works. An esteemed local art critic approached her, expressing admiration for her unique perspective. "You have an extraordinary ability to capture the complexity of human emotion," he said, his interest evident. "I would love to include your work in our next showcase." Emma's mind spun. This was no longer just a dream, it was validation. She felt tangible excitement bubbling inside her. It was as if she had finally proved that she could carve a path of her own making. In the corner of her eye, she caught her mother's gaze again, the unwavering pride reflecting in her eyes. Their earlier conversations had led not only to understanding, but to a potent recognition of how Emma's journey and the environmental legacy of love could coexist beautifully. They were vowing to keep lines of communication open, supporting each other through the evolutions of their identities while redefining their family dynamics. As the evening drew to a close, Emma found solace in the knowledge that she had conquered her internal conflicts and reignited her passion in a way that made room for her future. She had transformed pain into strength, fear into artistry, and doubt into determination. Now she stood firmly grounded in her accomplishments, carving out her rightful place in the world. "Today marks the beginning of something beautiful," she whispered to James, her partner in this journey and in life. Emma had not just accomplished an art exhibit, she had shed the constraints of expectation, embraced her own narrative, and found a life resonating with authenticity. With newfound purpose, she knew she would continue to face challenges, but with the strength to carry her dreams forward. The walls that once constrained her now stood in striking contrast to the expansiveness of her potential. This was the moment that defined Emma Harper, not merely as the artist, but as the young woman who embraced her story, carved out her identity, and ultimately redefined what it meant to honor both her family and herself. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, comment your reactions and theories about the ending, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support for stories of personal overcoming.